Welcome to the Encouraging Word with Tabatha Love. And I am Tabatha Love. Today, I'm outside. I'm out in my happy spot. I'm out in my place that keeps me, grounds me and keeps me comfortable. It's not that it's this particular spot, it's just in general. I'm at the park. I love being outdoors. So if you hear those crows, I think those are crows just going. And of course, nature always does its thing when you're out there. But I'm out at the park and I kind of purpose today's studio to be outside to hone in the message. So, what you see behind me are pecan trees. If you're in the South, you might say pecan, or another part of the South, you say pecan. I'm not quite sure how you say it, but they're the pecan trees, right? We said pecan, but and we loved them, right? It was a sign that winter was coming because we would eat the nuts, those and the walnuts and those Brazil nuts and all that good stuff. We in the South, we're in North Carolina, where I'm from, we would call them those Brazil nuts, another thing, but I'm not going to share that right now. But my thing is, behind me, those trees, they're producing a fruit right now because of the time that we're in. The time that we're in when I'm taping this right now is the beginning of October. So these pecan trees, they have produced their fruit because it's their time. And so today's encouraging word, I wanted you to think about timing. I wanted you to think about God's timing. I recently did a message this past Sunday, and I would talk to the church of what was laid on my heart, and it was laid on my heart to look around and to see what was going on and to see what time we were in and to do certain things. And it was three things, and I'm not going to do that message. If you want that message, you have to go to our church website and get that message and listen to it. But when I opened up, I talked about how at this particular time when I'm taping, as I said, the beginning of October, it's a shift. We're in this shift, right? And so when you look at the Gregorian calendar, you see that, hey, this is fourth quarter. This is the end. This is the last of the last, baby. We got 3 more months, October, November, December, and it is a wrap, right? And then, but if you look at a Hebrew calendar, they had just celebrated Rosh Hashanah. And I may be pronouncing that wrong because I'm not Hebrew, okay? And so, like I said, I'm from North Carolina. So my little accent is just what it is. But they celebrated Rosh Hashanah, which is the beginning of their new year. And so some people are celebrating the end of a year, and then some people are celebrating the beginning of the year. But as I said, when you look outside and you look at nature here in North Carolina, we're in the shift. There is a new season happening. We're putting away summer and we're coming into the fall. And once fall has its time, we're going to transition into the winter. And so my thought was, and what I wanted to encourage you with today is look around and see God's timing. Look around and see and pay attention to what God is doing. So many times we get caught up in life with the hustle, with the bustle. And hey, listen, I get it. I am a mom, a wife. Well, let me start. I'm a woman, I'm a wife, and I'm a mother. And it's just, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister. I have so many different roles we play, hats we wear. And it's just listen, life can get busy. Hello, can anybody else agree with that? Life gets busy. And sometimes you need an encouraging word. And so today I want you to think about God's timing. So many things happen in our lives, and I think we get so busy, so wrapped up, we don't see the fruit that's on the trees. So many times we don't see and notice, hey, wait a minute, it just got colder. Hey, wait a minute, the leaves are falling. Hey, wait a minute, it's different. It's different now. I have to adjust because the sun is not as bright as it was before. The days are getting shorter. There's a timing that God has. And it's a timing in nature, there's a timing in our life. And I today want you to stop. Even though I'm taping in October, I believe this message is relevant no matter what time, what season you listen to it, because the crux of the matter, the root of the matter is that God is moving, that time is moving, and we need to be alert to it. Something that happened, timing. I on Facebook, I put a message out on my page, and I was talking about, I'm always, I shouldn't say always, but many times I'm fussing with my oldest son. I don't know if that's because we have similar personalities, or if it's the fact that he's named after his daddy and he looks like his daddy and he act like his daddy, and I am so mean. And sometimes we just clash, right? But he and I, he's going to a different school now. So this is our first year at this school, and it's a longer commute for us. And so we're having to make these adjustments, and it's causing some friction, and it's a timing issue, because in order for us to get to that destination, we have to make another adjustment of when we leave. And you have to take certain things into account for that. And a change in season, we have to account for that. When it gets colder, the car needs to warm up, so we can't just roll out of bed, or we can't just take this particular time. We have to account for a delay, a timing. So again, I'm going to keep honing this in. We're a 30-minute broadcast. I want you to take a listen, relax, just call, just sit down, listen to the birds, look at the trees, relax, and focus on what's the timing in your life right now? What's God doing right now? Is this your time to where your trees are bearing fruit? Earlier, when I first was setting up, there were people out here and they were gathering the pecans off the ground. Earlier this year, that wasn't happening because the nuts wasn't on the tree, because it wasn't their time. If you look further back in the park, let's see if I turn, well, you always have to learn different when you're doing, everything's backwards when you're on camera. But there's a house back there. This park used to be a farm or a plantation, I'm not quite sure. But that's why there's all these fruit trees, and then there's like a farmhouse and a chicken coop. And when you look at them, they were built for another time. Not this time, because there is no running water. There are the appliances, the way the house was built, and what it was built with, and how it was structured. It was built for that time, not this time. And you are here for such a time as this. You are here for the time that you're in right now. God has you at this moment. We weren't born 100 years ago. We weren't born 200 years ago. We were born when we were born, and we're living at this time because God wanted us in this time. So the question is, God, what are you doing in this time? Now, when you think about timing, do you really think, like when you think about Bible stories, do you think anything, like who comes to your mind when you think about timing? Oh my goodness. My mind, there's so many people, there's so many things that come to my mind when it's talking about timing. I mean, just right off the bat, just when you look at Genesis 1, timing, creation was a point of timing. God did things, creation, at a certain time. He did things within 6 days. When on that 7th day, he rested. There was a set time that he was going to create this, he was going to create this, he was going to create this, and he did it in a certain way for a certain reason. Timing. The question that's looming, what is the time that God is doing? What is God doing with you in this time? What's happening right now in your time, right now? What's God doing? Because my challenge to you is, as we look at the timing that you're in, I want you to think about some things. I was talking with a friend, and I told you I just recently shared a message at the church, and I was talking about, hey, we're in this time, we're at the end of a season or the beginning of a season or the transition in the season, and I want y'all to do three things. And she said, oh, it's that church three things. It's the church three. And I was just like, okay, whatever. There was just three things, right? And so, in keeping with the three things, so and we're thinking about timing, let's consider this. Consider in God's preparation and in God's timing, consider the preparation. And you're like, Tab, what are you talking about? So we can use that tree, the pecan tree, like I said. The tree right now is bearing fruit, but could it bear fruit immediately? No. It had to prepare to plan to bear that fruit. That tree, this pecan tree, you see how tall it is? There's two of them. They're all around. There's several of them in this park. See how tall they are? You see how much, can you imagine how many roots, what their root system looks like? Imagine how old these trees are. There was a preparation that went into these trees bearing fruit. They just didn't come out bearing fruit. And if you know, the pecan is the fruit, but it's also the seed. Those nuts go in the ground and they produce the trees. There was a preparation. There was a maturation. There was a process. You hear that P word? Oh my gosh, sometimes I do not like that P word. Because process, it means there's some tearing down, and it means there's some building up. It means there's most of the time, some pruning. Over in the book of John, over in the New Testament, Jesus talks, he was like, hey, you can't do anything without me. And if you're going to be in me, you're going to get pruned so you can bear more fruit. He's going to break some things off. He's going to take some things away so that you can bear more fruit. Because sometimes if we're doing too much, you're not going to produce that good fruit. And so what I'm talking about is the preparation and the timing. Sometimes, you see that? Sometimes we're in a season of life. Sometimes there's a period where we're going through some things and we don't understand what God is doing. But God knows what he's doing. There is a time, there is a period, there is a season in which God is setting things up for the end goal, and where you are is that preparation period. He's grooming, he's shaping, he's molding, he's building a root system so that you can grow, hallelujah, and so that you can spread your wings, and so that at some point in time, on a regular basis, you can bear fruit like that tree, like that pecan tree. You can bear fruit. That tree, that pecan tree, or these pecan trees, they bear fruit year after year after year after year. They're set. There's something in that DNA that under the right conditions, and each year they will, at a certain point in time, they will bear fruit. That's powerful. That's how good our God is. And some people try to say he doesn't exist. Are you kidding me? Out of a seed, out of a nut, goes in the ground, and it goes through a process, and over years, over the process of time, that will grow, that seed will grow into a tree, and under the right conditions, it will produce over and over and over and over. Seriously? Only by a divine creator, only by a divine person could that happen. Our God, with that kind of wisdom. And if he could do that with a tree, how would he not work and move in us, and when we're created in his own image after his own likeness? Are you serious? Did you need encouragement this morning, or this afternoon, or this evening, or at this point in day? Are you having one of those days where you're just feeling like, what is the point? And I am trying to tell you, and I'm trying to encourage you, that God has a timing. When you look all in the Bible, it just starts with creation. When Genesis, if you start there, but if you turn to the very end of the Bible in the book of Revelation, what you're going to see? You're going to see timing. You're going to see timing where he's talking about, hey, these things are going to happen. You're going to see, hey, there's this seal and there's this seal and how there's a war here and this and that. But it's all in a timing. It's not all happening right now. And when it happens, it's going to happen. There's going to be a period of time for this, a period of time for that. You got to read it. But when you do read it, if you've read it, you would agree. Surely, I'm not trying to, my job in encouraging word is not to be the authoritarian on Bible. I'm not trying to go deep in and dissect and do this intense Bible study. That's not my purpose. My purpose is to encourage you in your daily life, living life with the love. And God is love, and his word is love. He loves us. And in this book, if we read it, he's telling us how to live this life for such a time as this. And so I just want to encourage you that if you look at Genesis, when the creation, and if you look at Revelation, where it's like, hey, he's exposing what's going to happen in the end time events and what's going to happen when he returns. Hey, it's all about timing. It's reserved a set time. Jesus in the New Testament, he was talking and his disciples were like, hey, when are you going to take on your kingdom? When are you going to do this? And Jesus is like, hey, no man knows the time or the hour when all this is going to happen. I'm not going to tell you all that. The Father knows that. There's a timing. There's a timing all throughout the Bible. You want me to share one with you? You want me just for some that are the Bible scholars that are there, and some that really blessed me. There's two of them in particular. Like one of them, you know what got me? One, I think the whole book of Esther is a book of timing. Just the whole book. So one of the points I made was preparation, right? And then the other point that I made, or that I wanted to make, was obedience. Right? When you look at timing, you see how God is preparing. Like he sets a season and it's a time of preparation. And I used the tree. I talked about how the seed goes down into the ground, and then after a while, the tree grows up, and then after it's a part of preparation, and then it starts bearing fruit. And so it's like you say obedience. Well, how can a tree be obedient? But it's obedience is like following the rules or following the laws or just be going in accordance or following the instructions, right? So that tree is doing what it's been told to do. That the seed has a DNA in it and is following the commands that were set forth by its creator. So again, what about us? God has prepared us. He's trained us. He's equipped us. Are we going to be obedient? Right? So looking at the book of Esther, if you, again, summarizing that story, there was in a kingdom, and then you have this king, and then you have this queen, and there's a Queen Vashti, and then the king, he was like, hey, I want to show off the queen, and Queen Vashti was like, nah, I don't want to go. So then the king gets advice and kicks her out, and then goes on to search for a new queen. And then to get the new queen, they go out and they search for all these young, beautiful virgins. And so there's this lady called Hadassah, or I think that was one of the names. And then, but we know her as Esther. And so she's chosen. And so she's she's selected, and then she gets all this treatment, and then they prepare her before she meets the king. It's all in there. She gets all these beauty treatments. She gets all of this preparation, like months before she's even put before the king. And then when she finally gets to go before the king, she's ready, right? And she's prepared. And guess what? She finds favor. She finds favor before the king, but she doesn't disclose that she's a Jew. And why doesn't she disclose that she's a Jew? Because her cousin, Mordecai, said, hey, don't you do that. And so she was obedient. And then when it comes out that there's a decree to kill all the Jews, and her cousin Mordecai comes over and is like, hey, listen, this is what's going down, and you need to do something. And Esther's like, hey, wait, I don't know about this. And Mordecai says, hey, God's going to help us. whether you help us or not. But you might want to think about, now this is Tabitha paraphrase, and you read it. It's over in the book of Esther. I think it's Esther chapter 4 or something like that. Maybe you were chosen for such a time as this. Maybe God put you in place to be right in front of the king, to give an audience for the Jews right to the king. Maybe God did that. Maybe that's what he was doing. Maybe he was stirring up something, and maybe he strategically placed you in front of the king for such a time as this. So maybe when we're looking for a job, because I'm looking for a job right now, maybe God will orchestrate our steps to put us in the right place so we can be at the right time, so we can say something to the right person so that they can have an encouraging word, so they can go on and do what God has called them to do. Maybe we're going to be in the right job at the right time so that we can lead somebody to Christ, so that they can go on and be that missionary, be that pastor, to be that teacher, to be that great businessman that's going to do great things for the kingdom. Maybe that you were called to be in a certain place at a certain time so that you could help change that woman's flat tire, so you could help provide the groceries for that family, or so that you can provide the clothing for a particular family. Maybe you're God for a family, for a person in that season, for such a time as this. Maybe you were prepared for that particular moment that you just had to be obedient in. You just had to open up your mouth. You just had to pray. For Esther, she said, okay, Mordecai, I'm listening to you. I'm going to call my ladies and we're going to fast and we're going to pray. And then she came back with a plan, and before she approached the king. And then when her plan went forth, it worked. And the king couldn't change his word, but he gave a decree and for certain things to happen. And so the Jews were protected. And in that same book, there was Mordecai, the person, there was a man named Haman, and he was the same one that was trying to kill the Jews. And in particular, he hated Mordecai because Mordecai wouldn't bow down to him. And he said, he was like, I'm going to kill Mordecai. And his encouragement, they encouraged him to build these gallows to kill Mordecai. But then God had another plan. God said, put it on the king's heart to have them read to him the stories and read to him the accounts and things that were happening. And it was read to him how Mordecai had saved the king's life. And so then the king goes up to Haman and says, hey, what do I do for somebody that loves me? Or what do I do for somebody that I want to honor? And so Haman gave this elaborate plan. And he said, okay, great, let's do that for Mordecai. And then when it was found out what Haman had tried to do to the Jews and tried to do to Mordecai, Haman was hung on the very contraptions in the very place that he had built to kill Mordecai. What am I saying? Look at the timing in your life. Look at what God has prepared you for. Look at the obedience that is necessary. Just get in position. Just go where God's telling you to go. If he's telling you to go over here, make a right. Go to this grocery store right here. Go over there and call this person. Because maybe you are chosen for such a time as this. Maybe you need it for such a time as this. And because the last point, because you can be a blessing. Do you see in that story? Well, first, let's just look at the tree. The tree is a blessing to people and to animals. When I was walking back here to set up right here at this little table, there was a squirrel walking by or running on the ground, and he had a nut in his mouth. The tree is a blessing. The fruit that it bears is a blessing to God's creation. If God does that for a tree, what will he do for you? Are you not a blessing to those around you? When he's prepared you, when he's groomed you, and when you're walking in obedience, you're a blessing. Look at Esther. She was a blessing. She was specifically put into the king's palace for such a time. Because God knew that decree was coming forth. God knew what was about to happen, but he put in a plan. He put in a plan. Where are you in God's plan? You are a blessing. As I'm looking for a job, you know what I've been trying to motivate myself with? I am a blessing to somebody. I am a blessing to some company because I have the skills that they need. God will use me in that place to where it'll be a win-win situation. That's what I've been saying to myself because he orders my steps. We all quote many times where we talk about that Jeremiah 29:11, and it's taken out of context most of the time. But I think the general point that we're trying to get at is that God has plans. That even when you're in captivity, that even when you've been sentenced and people have given up on you, hey, don't you despair. Don't you give up. God has a plan. You can see that with the children children of Israel when they were in Egypt for what, 400 years, I think it was. God didn't give up on them. He had a plan. There was a plan. He had a deliverer coming through Moses. He had a plan. God has a plan. Today when I'm recording this is October the 3rd, and one of my favorite, and I always read a book of Proverbs on the day, or not always, but I try to read a book of Proverbs according to the day of the week. And so today being October the 3rd, when I'm taping this, and you look at Proverbs chapter 3, one of the favorite scriptures is trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him because he'll direct your path. God will direct your path. He's got a plan. His plans, his thoughts, they're good, not evil. All good things come from above, comes down from the Father of lights. That's New Testament. All throughout the Bible, you see how God, he's a loving father. He's a caring father. He's got good plans. He's got good thoughts. Yes, he disciplines us. Yes, he corrects us. But that's what a good father does. He's got good plans. He's got good thoughts. He has a timing. And in his time, he'll say enough of that. He'll say enough of this. One of the things I actually ran out of time. I wasn't sure that I was going to run out of time, but another story I was wanting to share was over there in the book of 2 Kings. And when you look in the book of 2 Kings, you'll see the story of the Shunammite woman. And it's 2 Kings, it's chapter 8, 1 through 6 is one part of it. And then I think in 2 Kings chapter 4, there was the first part of it. But that Shunammite woman, she was a bad lady. She had some incredible faith, man. But God, the prophet told her and her family said, hey, won't you leave for 7 years? Because there's going to be a famine, so leave. And they left for 7, their famine was 7 years. She comes back and she goes straight to the king to get her land and her house. And do you know what happened? When you look in the Bible, it says that Gehazi, who was the assistant to the prophet at the time when she was blessed with a son, Gehazi was next to the king and was telling the king about the lady, the Shunammite lady. And then the lady walks in. Gehazi says, look, king, there she is right there. That person I just told you about, she's right there. And when she stood in front of the king said, okay, well, let's give her all her stuff. And then let's give her the money from her crops that she missed. She was restored that day. I'm telling you, as we wrap up, as we close, as this encouraging word comes to an end, I want you to be encouraged in God's timing. He has not forgotten us. He has not forgotten you. He knows your situation. And there is a reason, there is a process, there is a maturation that requires obedience from your part to just do what he is calling you to do. And if you don't know, we can base it and get our foundation from the word, because you're a blessing. You're a blessing to the kingdom. You're a blessing to the people around you. Let God use you. Understand his timing. Be blessed. Be encouraged. Know that God loves you. Know that there is a purpose in his timing. Okay? Have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening to today's encouraging word with Tabatha Love. And if you need more encouragement, then tune in, because we'll be back every week with an encouraging word just for you. Living life with love, Tabatha Love. You can check out our website at tabathalove.com. Bye-bye.